of the saints, roaring on these drums. And his blood bringing hope to the slums. He is the God, man, who came down in human flesh. Fashionistas, we needed help to get dressed. This Givenchy, Hermes in high fashion. Red carpet rhymes, got all of the people asking. All this passion for diamonds and a bunch of bling. He ain't a penny for real, man, he the only king. This is Jesus walks the way it should've dropped. Cause when you do a whole album, the label flops. But who cares, this is fake, don't overdose. The sound of his grace through the Holy Ghost. Lord knows I'm a renegade and a maven. My allegiance to the sun got me still praising. I'm praising. And his love, man, is so amazing. Amazing. Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live the king. Long live. Turn up. I can hear the sound of the lost, crying out for something better than packed clubs and Instagramming, popping bottles and day together, a mini dress, high heels, fast life, high thrills. It all ends in misery after empty bottles and pop pills. What it means to be king. Young Simba means we get our back strong so we can carry all of that Roman timbers. That tomb ready? Yeah, that tomb ready. If you boys want crowns, then that cross heavy, y'all ain't ready, but I carry mine. Yeah, I carry mine. Can't run away from pain, so we sat and dined. My king ate from the same plate, and I expect the same fate. It's either that or chase dreams that don't carry the same weight. A slave to our bottom, tell me what we chasing. Happiness is fleeting, but joy's why we racing. He paid that I couldn't pay, I was thirsty and he made a way. Still got that living water, boy, Bobby Boucher. Still got that living water, boy, Bobby Boucher. Bring me that crown of thorns. Long live the king. Long live the king.
I dwell in the heavenlies. You'll never ever see another king measured to me, the King of Kings, which means that I'm just better. So just for clarity, I'll forever be, I'm guaranteed longevity as a king. No Chris Webber, yeah, kings wear purple, well I reign like the weather. So long live the king, like the prince's predecessor. Yes sir, somewhat my spot like a leopard, while I'm amusing all their efforts, amusing their endeavors. Leonidas lost with 300, and that ain't many men. I won a war with 300 while using Gideon. Leonidas was a dumb king, he didn't come back with any man. I show that you can make kingdom man out of any man. I'm the king, no, T.I. when he's rapping, more like the king, like that motivating black man. Oh yes, I am the king like James Earl Jones when he's acting. So call me the after the music stops. Track 10.
What it do, y'all? It's your partners. We in the building. What's going down, baby? You doing good?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And we back in for that Bible talk chat session, Doc. Y'all know how we get it down every Sunday, man. Let's get it in real fast, man. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Tuning in with your partners, man. You know it's your partner, Dale. Does the Bible communicate Jesus is God?
What it's communicating about Christ and how he exists is so outside of our ability to grasp and comprehend.
Jason, man, today, man, we got a top man that's may shock some people, man. They probably heard it before in some pockets, or you may not have. But I think it's a good discussion for us to realistically have concerning the does the Bible communicate a kingdom or religion? What do you think about that topic, Jason?
I think that depending on your worldview, where you come from, how you define certain terms will, bring about how that what you think about religion. And anytime we're talking about God, it seems like God falls into the religious bucket, and it doesn't seem like we're taught any other aspects of God or the concept of God outside of this mindset of a religious belief that we have. And I think that what we see in the scriptures as we began to unpack the scriptures is that a religion is not something that's being instituted in the scripture. It is a kingdom, for lack of a better term. And as we dive into it, we can unpack that. But man, I really don't like the term religion when it comes to speaking of the Bible talk.
Yeah.
I think it allows us to overlook some key points and puts God in a box that he was never designed to be in, or Christ never spoke about or instituted himself.
Gotcha. Now, you said something that may be a little bit controversial and may be abnormal to people's thinking. You just made a comment that Christ never taught about religion. What you mean?
Well, when we look at the words of Christ, what he taught, the things that came out of his mouth, he specifically highlighted the fact that he was coming from a place that existed, and he was coming down to earth for a specific purpose. And that specific purpose was tied to this place or this kingdom that he was from. That would be the same correlation as, hey, I am from America, but I am going to go to China for a specific purpose. So Jesus is saying, I'm coming from a kingdom, a place that has a king, a governing system, and a people. And I'm coming down here to do the work of this kingdom, or the king has sent me to do, or to go on a mission, so to speak. So my representation is from this place that I come from, just as soldiers, when they go across seas, are representing the United States or whatever they're.
Okay. So the question we got to ask is: so does the Bible communicate just about a kingdom, or is it about religion?
I'm gonna say 100% hands down that it is about a kingdom, a governing system that exists, that is crying out to man to be a part of its population.
Now, where you're getting this term or this concept of kingdom from the scriptures? Because we're making a. Go ahead.
Specifically, I'm just going to look at the words of Jesus, and then we can allude to the Old Testament and what God set up when it came to the people of old, and how Jesus speaks about himself and why he came to earth.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go to this thing real fast, Jason. Let me get to it. There we go. Let's get down to it then. This is the first thing that jumps out to me, Jason, is Matthew chapter 4.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm parking here is this is the first time Christ begins his ministry.
Okay.
He's now beginning to talk about what his assignment is. He's talking to the masses. So he's taking it from closed doors. Now he's to the masses now. And I'm going to really focus on verse 17. It says, from this time, Jesus began to preach, say, repent, For there go the word kingdom. Kingdom of heaven is at hand. That is that word now comes up out of the blue. This is Christ's first words to the masses. So this concept of kingdom, he said, repent, for the kingdom is here. And so that kind of walks in lockstep with what you're talking about. Would that be sufficient?
Man, I like that. I agree with that.
Mhm.
So, man, my question becomes, what is a kingdom and
Ooh.
what is a religion? And
Ooh.
distinction between those two, if there
Okay.
is.
Okay. I would say this here is a kingdom is a territory
Okay.
that is ruled by a king, hence the word kingdom itself.
Okay.
And the strange thing about a kingdom is this here is the whole government rests upon the king himself. The king is simultaneously the ruler, he's simultaneously the government, he's all things for all people. All authority and power rests upon the king itself. But it is a kingdom is a territory. And
Mm.
would you agree with that?
Yeah. So, are you saying that a kingdom cannot exist if it doesn't have a territory to rule over?
From a biblical standpoint, yes. Now the question is, what is a territory? Because one territory is, when it comes to scripture, is heaven itself. You have the kingdom of heaven. Um, uh, so that's one. That's an intangible territory that God Himself rules over. If you look at Isaiah 9:6, it talks about Christ coming, and it says that He's the wonderful counselor, mighty God, eternal Father. And the whole government rests upon his shoulder. So it's talking about Christ being this king that is coming to rule, and which is, he's currently ruling, and the whole government, which was the territory, rests upon his shoulder. He
Mm,
himself is the king. If that makes some sense.
yeah. Got you. I like it. So, so a kingdom is a territory that's ruled by a king. And so, what is a religion?
Oh, religion is a man-made system that's placed in place to govern the decision making of the people. The key word there
Uh,
is man-made.
got a quick definition here. It says
Okay.
religion is usually defined as a social cultural system of designated behaviors and practices, morals, beliefs, world views, texts, sanctified places, prophecies, ethics, or organizations that generally relate humanity to the supernatural, transcendental, and spiritual elements.
Yep.
However, there is no scholarly consensus over what
Mhm.
precisely constitutes a religion.
Mm, mm. Interesting. So even that's up for debate, depending on who you are talking to.
Definitely, 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 definitely. But there are some things that stand out to me when reading this definition. It
Mhm.
says it's a social cultural system of
Mm,
designated behaviors and practices, moral beliefs, and worldviews.
mm. Gotcha.
Um, so it seems to me that a religion has uh, ele- elements of a kingdom or
Yeah.
elements of a governing rule that is more conceptual in nature and not
Mm,
an actual reality. It almost is
gotcha.
some man dictates and creates, and he allows himself to be ruled by that thing.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Gotcha.
it almost seems like a concept that we come up with, and we form the system of belief, and then say, hey, I want to go along, and this is what I believe.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, that's a great breakdown. Let's graduate over to what is a kingdom. I have to have a definition of that right now, and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger so people can actually read it for us real fast. This says a kingdom is a politically organized community or major territorial unit having a monarchical form of government headed by a king or queen. That's what this says. Often capitalized. The eternal kingship of God. So it's going over things, an area or sphere of which, I'm get rid of this real fast. An area or sphere in which one holds a preeminent position, a realm or region in which something is dominant. Excuse me. Those are really the three that kind of jump out to me. It is a politically organized community because a king is a politician, but he's the only politician. He's the only one. And then it says a major territorial unit having a monarchical form of government headed by a king or a queen. So the entire government rests upon the king himself. But he was a king over a specific territory. Yes, he is. A realm.
So it seems like when Jesus says, for the kingdom of God is here, he is really setting the context for his entire existence and his entire purpose not existence, but his entire purpose moving forward.
That is correct.
So
that is correct.
And you correct me if I'm wrong. What Jesus is saying, the kingdom of heaven is here.
Yes.
The representation for the government that is called the kingdom of heaven has entered into the earth, and I am its representative.
Yes, because wherever the king is, so is the kingdom. Wherever the king is, so is the kingdom. So he says, repent. This is Matthew 4:7. For the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Why is it at hand? Because I'm the king and I'm here. That's what he's talking about when he's actually saying that. So that's the first time we've heard a kingdom type of term come out of Christ's mouth. First time ever. If that makes some sense. And then if you look at, let me go back over here, Jason, to Isaiah. This is Isaiah 9. It says, for a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders. Why? Because the king is the government. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace, and there will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace. Why? Because the entire government rests upon the king itself, as a definition told us before, if that makes some sense. So, interesting stuff there.
And one thing I noticed, just making observations, is a lot of times when Jesus spoke, he would give a correlation. He would say things like, the kingdom of heaven is like this. Or he would say, if you want to enter into my kingdom, you have to do my Father's will. Things like that. But it seems to me that in our culture, we operate in more of a different type of governing system. So I think tend to overlook those words, and we don't take them as serious or know how to properly process them, so that we can really get the grasp of what Jesus is communicating about this entire concept, or this entire reason for him coming. It seems like we've put Jesus into the religious category when he didn't put in the religious category, but he put himself in the political realm. So Jesus came seems to be speaking about more of a political type situation versus a religious origin.
That is correct. So it's probably going to be proper for us to begin to unpack this. So the question is, what is a democracy? What is that? What's a democracy? Let's see. Let's look at it and see. Let us see. Let us see. Let me go. Let me share it real fast. Here's a democracy, guys. Make it bigger. This is democracy. It says a democracy is government by the people, especially the rule of majority. A government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and is exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. A political unit that has a democratic government. So it seems like what we've been exposed to, Jason, is we've been exposed to only a system that is governed by the people and for the people. That's what we hear all the time. This is a government that's for the people, by the people. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So should we be operating, or how should we be operating when we look at the scriptures, but have to operate in this democracy? So it seems to me that there's a disconnect between how the scriptures is unfolding and the system of government that they are under versus the system of government that we're under. And do we have the right to inject the mindset of a democracy and filter these scriptures through our lenses, or are we required to conform to the scriptures and begin to understand how to navigate under this concept of a kingdom when it comes to our citizenship in heaven?
Well, that's a good question. I think that what we need to do is, now you're asking this question: what are the differences between a kingdom and a democracy? And so, yes, you are correct. We are actually in a system, living currently a system of democracy. So, because this is democracy is a government for the people and by the people, and the Bible does talk about in the book of Romans about us. We need to pray for, honor our government officials, and pray for them as well. So, how do we begin to navigate between what the Bible communicates, which is what the Bible is? This is what the Bible is about. This is what the Bible is about, and it's very simple to see. I want to see if you agree, Jason. The Bible is about a king, his kingdom, and his royal children. So the question is, how does his royal children begin to operate within this thing called a democracy? It's very simple. Let's look at the difference between a kingdom and a democracy. Number one, a democracy is what? The power is in the people. All right. In a kingdom, the power is in one person, the king. In the democracy, you vote. In the kingdom, there is no vote. There's only one vote, and that's the king. In the democracy, the people produce the law. Okay. In the kingdom, the words of the king become the law. If you begin to look at history when it comes to kings, kings very rarely spoke, because of the fact that what happened is when kings began speaking, what happened was they had people actually following them around. And whatever the king actually detailed, and Jason will be back, guys. Something happened to him. And whatever the king actually spoken became law. So if you look at history, what actually happened is this here is, there he is. What actually happened is this here is kings very rarely spoke, because whatever they said became a law. And lastly, in a democracy, the people, we cherish private ownership. We cherish that. We actually go out and compete for it as well also. And in the kingdom, this is the sweet thing about it. We own nothing. The king owns everything. And it's a word called commonwealth. He gives his kids access to all that he has. That's the difference of a kingdom and democracy. Jason, you agree, fam?
Yeah, I like those points. Keep talking.
All right. Now we have to go to okay, how can we say that God is Christ is the king? Very simple. That word Lord in the Hebrew just means Adon, or that just means Lord. It means owner. Adonai just means owner. All that means. And then if you look at it again, it says in Psalms 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. So that's a statement of ownership. He owns everything. So now if you go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, it says, and I can go there, it says, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them, who's them, rule? Who's them? Man, over the birds of the field, the nature. That's just dominion. That word is dominion in the Hebrew. That's all it is. So he's giving authority for man to manage earth on his behalf. Because why? The earth is the Lord's. It's his. He owns it all. He owns it all. And so how do we begin to kind of gauge and begin to unpack and say, okay, how can we read the text and see kingdom all in it, know that Christ is the king, but also operate in a righteous way within his democracy? It's very simple. Do what it says. You got to pray for your government officials. Pray for them. Honor them as well. We can do both at the same time. You agree, fam?
So are you saying that from the creation, God was operating on the kingdom, on this kingdom principle at the very point of him creating man?
Oh, yes. Oh yes. Let's go back to the text. let's go back. Let's go back to the scriptures. Let's go to it. Give me 1 second. Let me switch over real fast. Let's go to Genesis real fast. And let's just see what it said. Don't take my word for it. Let's see what he said. All right, we're in Genesis chapter 1. Let me get it back over there real fast, guys. And we can read it. We can read it real fast. This is the creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and the darkness was the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. So that statement says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, we just read in Psalm chapter 24, verse 1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and all that actually dwell in it. That's a statement of ownership. Why? Because he created it all. Now, if you go down a little bit, Jason, this goes through all the creation things in nature, which is fine. Let's go down to verse 26. This is the key thing. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule. So he's giving authority for man to rule on his behalf. So this is the owner giving authority away.
Created. So this earth is a kingdom that's being created, and man is given the authority on behalf of the king to rule over this portion of his territory.
Yes, that is correct. And notice, I'm gonna keep reading this. And Jason, tell me what you don't see in this text. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let rule over the fish of the sea, of the birds of the air, of the birds of the sky, over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. What don't you see in there?
I don't know. What you thinking?
Not one man. Did they say anything about ruling over man? No, not at all. It says over everything else but man. I noticed that as I began to read this a little bit, but again, I digress on that as well. But that's what I kind of see is you have the owner of earth given authority over to man to rule on the owner's behalf. That's called stewardship. Now, Can we go a little bit deeper real fast? Let's go to Genesis chapter 3 real fast. Is it 3? No, it's 2. It's 2. Now I'll be done, Jason, for a second. It's 2. I think it's 2:5. It says, now no shrub of the field was yet in the earth. No plant of the field had yet sprouted. Why? For the owner had not sent rain upon the earth. Why? And there was no man who he just gave authority to cultivate the ground. So God was withholding rain. He was withholding growth. The owner was, because there was not a man there to rule on his behalf. That's how committed he is to this dominion, man ruling on his behalf. That makes some sense.
So we have, even I've been taught, and what I observe just everywhere is that I've been taught that Christianity is a religion. And how we operate on this world is that this is a religion that we follow. We follow the teachings of Christ. So Christ came to preach a kingdom. We have taken the teachings and packaged them and said, hey, this is Christianity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Doc. And you can look at church history, and church history a little bit better than I do, because you studied that thing for a long period of time. I know it, but you can go a little more deeper than I can. But you see, there is a term that people use, and I agree with it 1,000%. Religion is toxic. Religion has been used to kill people. They're spot on, 1,000%. But my question is, why would Christ bring something that is going against him immediately? In other words, the Sadducees and the Pharisees will call religious leaders. Why would he bring the same thing? It didn't make any sense to me. Does it make sense to you at all?
Man, this is interesting, man, because as I continue to look at the scriptures and Jesus begins to preach even more, it says in verse 23, and Matthew chapter 4, verse 23, it says, now Jesus began to go all over Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. So anytime we're studying the Bible, one of the principles that we operate under is that anytime you see a recurring theme, it needs to be honed in on because it's important.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And if you look, and then we go into chapter 5 of Matthew, and then Jesus begins to expound on this kingdom, and he's given us some insight on the values of this kingdom, how this kingdom operates. So he is, quote unquote, testifying about this place that he is from. It says in chapter 5, when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to teach them. So Jesus has the entire, or I don't want to say the entire, he has this crowd and this audience of people, right? So he has the ear of the people, and then what he begins to unfold seems to continue to go along these same lines of this kingdom that he's speaking. It says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the earth. And so on and so on. And if you look at verse 10, when he wraps up this teaching, he says, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs.
Yes, sir.
Jesus is continually to referring to this place, and he seemed now to be giving us some meat and potatoes about the place. So it seems to me, when we're studying the scriptures, if we're following what Jesus says, we should be asking, I want to know more about this kingdom.
Yes, sir.
But how has this kingdom that Jesus preached become a religion that men follow?
Well, I would say whenever you involve man in any type of situation, don't be surprised if there is some fumbling of the ball. And whenever God gave dominion or gave authority over to man in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, remember, that's a king talking. And when a king talks, a law is passed. And whenever a law is passed by the king, even the king himself cannot violate that law. That's why if you look at history, kings very rarely spoke because they had people following them around, and whatever the king ever came out of the king's mouth, they wrote down because it actually became a law. That's the difference. That is the difference of what Christ was bringing. Christ was bringing a kingdom. Even when he was actually in front of Pilate, what were they talking about? But before I go back there, when he was in front of the Sanhedrin, when they arrested him, Jason, did Jesus speak that much? Nah. Why didn't he speak that much?
Tell us.
Because it was the wrong court. Kings don't talk to politicians. They're beneath him. But when he got in front of Pilate, who does Pilate represent? He represented Caesar. And whatever Pilate said, which I believe Pilate was the governor, whatever Pilate said, if you begin to study kingdoms or kingdoms, whatever Pilate said, Caesar says. So when Christ got in front of Pilate, did he speak a lot?
That's when he started to speak.
Yes, sir. Why? It was kingdom versus kingdom now. Look at my kingdom's not of this world. If it was so, my followers would come get me. And guys, I'm summarizing. The whole dialogue was around his kingship and his kingdom. Would that be accurate, Jason?
I agree.
So even in the presence of Pilate, and guys, look at the authority he spoke with. Pilate says, I could take your life away like this. Christ said, and this is Pilate. Pilate was known as a tyrant. People were afraid of this man, afraid of him. Jesus in chains, and I'm adding some theatrics to it, leaning forward and says, no one takes my life. I give it up to Pilate. This is craziness. Not for a king, though. Not for a king. Christ was a different beast. He was different. And then here's another thing that kind of shocked me, Jason, is in the scriptures, guys, in the New Testament, I believe, there was a centurion general, I believe. And he was looking for someone to heal his servant's, I do believe, child. I don't know if it was daughter or son, child, one or two. And what happened was
pull that up.
What's that at? What was that at, man? Let me see. What text is that in? Jesus heals the centurion. I don't have it on top of my head. What text is that, guys? If you guys know what that is, let me know.
Let's go. We got, it looks like it's in Luke 7, 1 through 10, and Matthew 8, 5 through 13.
Let's go on. We in
Uh,
Matthew. Let's go and say Matthew then. Here we go. Matthew. Come on now, over there. I can't type today. Matthew 8, you said?
Matthew 8, 5 through 13.
Let's see what it says. 5 to 13. Is this the one to my land? Home, fearful. Jesus is going to come. Where did he come to the roof? For I
There,
was also. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's read from it. When Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. And a leper came to him and bowed down before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go, show yourself to the priest and present the offering that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Verse 5. Here's verse 5, guys. It says, and when Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, imploring him and saying, Lord, now this is centurion, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, fearfully tormented. Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion, this is the key thing. But the centurion said, Lord, I am not worthy of you to come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant be healed. Why? For I am also a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and to another, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and he does it. Now Jesus heard this. He marveled and said to those who were following, truly I say to you, I have not found such faith with anyone in Israel. I say to you that many will come from east to west and recline at the table of Abraham in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said to the centurion, go, it shall be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed that very moment. Here's my thing here. Is this here? That centurion understood how a kingdom worked. Am I right, Jason?
yeah.
He said, let's go. He said, let's go. He said, no, just say the word. And then he lets him know how he knows that Christ's word has authority. And then Christ's response was, I haven't seen this in this amount of faith anywhere in Israel. So this guy understood how a kingdom worked.
Right. So the centurion came to him. The centurion came to Jesus with the mindset of, I operate in the kingdom, sure, and I have a certain level of authority under this kingdom. Mm-hmm. I understand that the kingdom that you come from, you have authority. Mm-hmm. And you are royalty. Yeah. Now, that guy understanding that the king would never come to his house. Yeah. Woo. He said, yo, you don't need to come to my house, because I understand when Caesar says something, woo, it happens. Yes, sir. And Caesar can say something and it happens and never have to be visible. Yes. So he said, yo, I get it. I'm with it. I understand. You don't need to come. My house ain't even worthy for you to come there because of who you are. That is something, Jason. We don't operate. Oh no. The religion that I was taught about, that Jesus is the key player in, doesn't talk like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't operate like that. And this kingdom is never really even mentioned. And if it is mentioned, it's in passing. But it seems that is putting this kingdom on the forefront. Jesus doesn't even highlight himself. He's highlighting this kingdom.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Can we go a little deeper, Jason?
So yeah, we put emphasis on Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus was here, didn't put emphasis on himself.
And here is the proof. Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom. Why didn't he say himself? And his righteousness. Then he brings himself in. And all these things will be added unto you. Christ had to seek the kingdom first, not himself. Uh-oh.
And if you go, it says in 32, he says, for the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, for your heavenly Father knows that you need all these.
Yes.
But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Who? The heavenly Father, the king, the one who reigns and decrees. And when he speaks, things come into existence. And when he sends his angels out, they obey.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is tying this to an ultimate authority of his Father, who is the ruler, who has governors, who has dominion, who has troops that go and do his bidding while he sits on the throne back at the kingdom, just like Caesar.
Yes, 1000%. Now, why would he say that? Why would he say, seek first his kingdom? Why? Because whenever a king speaks, whatever the king says becomes a law. And the king himself has to follow that exact law. He can't violate it. So he's saying, if you want to hook up, just seek first his kingdom. Why? I'm bound by what I say. And his righteousness. Now how do you get to these? What are the keys to this kingdom? Oh, his righteousness. And then you'll watch the king do all the adding. There's the commonwealth again, because the king owns everything. And he gives access to all that he owns to his kids. He's giving you the keys.
And let's look at this context in a little broader, because Jesus is speaking about a specific topic here that I don't want us to miss, and I don't want to make it we're just taking verses and making we mean what we want them to mean. Jesus is talking to these people about money and riches. He's talking to them about how to view, now how to relate to the kingdom when it comes to wealth. Right? So in this chapter 5, we're down at 33, but he starts at let me see. He starts at I'm sorry.
You good? Take your time. Yep, right there. Fasting the true treasure, wealth. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Doc. Now, Jason, why you looking it up, Jason? Let me ask you a question, Doc. Let me ask you a question. Because you have been to Bible college. You have seminary training, just as I have some seminary training as well. Is there one course? Is there any courses taught on the kingdom?
I've never took a class on kingdom or even heard anyone ever teaching about kingdom.
Now watch this. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro.
And Christ said to seek the kingdom first. So how can we teach something? How can we begin to experience something that's not being taught to us?
Yeah.
And he said, seek that first. He didn't say himself. He said the kingdom. Oh, I can go deep into that one, but I'm not today. I'm not today, y'all. I'm not. Oh, I'm not.
Just to give further context, Jesus and verse 19 really is where it starts, where he talks about storing up your treasures on earth, But then if you go down in verse 25, he says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. And then he started giving examples of how God cares for his creation. Right? He talks about the birds of the air, how God makes sure that the birds of the air have what they need. And, then he talks about the grass. And then he says, hey, these things perish, and God takes intimate care of these things. So how much more will God take care of you, his kingdom citizens?
Yes.
His people, right? So there's a distinction, and Jesus is clearly giving us how the kingdom operates versus how their current kingdom operates, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Jesus is saying the king in the kingdom of heaven takes care of his people.
Yes.
He provides your every need because that is the responsibility of the king.
Yes.
Versus the king of heaven, versus the kings on earth, which they are dealing with, are more of a dictator type
Yes.
structure. So Jesus is giving a distinction, and he's telling us how this kingdom is ran.
Yes.
So while we look at these scriptures and we relay it to God,
Yeah.
which I think we should relay it to God, but
Sure.
he's talking about in a more broader sense, in a more precise sense, how God runs his operation, right? How God runs his business, how God runs his kingdom, right? So we understand how businesses operate,
Sure.
right? More than a kingdom operates.
Yeah.
We how businesses operate.
Yeah.
Each one of those businesses have a core set of values, and when we're dealing with those companies, we expect to see the core values in which they push and which they market to us.
That's right.
Jesus is coming and marketing and presenting to us how this place he operates exists.
That is correct.
It would be like, let's say there was a new kingdom that was established. You got the US, you got China, and we got Russia. Let's say we had a new place, and they were saying, hey guys, come to our country. Why should you come to our country? Because this is what you can expect.
That's correct.
And all are welcome, right? So at that point, you're going to have people that will choose to go and be under that kingdom in hopes of receiving what the king promised them.
That's correct. That's correct.
In that same way, Christ is saying, hey, this is how it is where I'm from. You want to come?
Yeah.
So when Jesus came to earth, he was saying, hey, I came to die. I'm coming to die so that I can welcome you, so that you can become, so that you can gain your citizenship, so that you can get your passport, so that you can enter into the land of this place that I am from, right? He's coming to recruit. He's coming. The king is saying, we don't have enough citizens. We need citizens. Son, go get the citizens. Bring citizens. Let's get our numbers up.
Yeah. And the thing about it is when Christ's death, burial, resurrection is redemption. If you look at the word, Jason, redemption, just means again. So redeemed, you were deemed first, because read means again. So basically what's happening is Christ's death, burial, and resurrection is God stepping into time and saying, okay, I'm going to I'm going to again deem or redeem man back into right relationship with me, so that man can then rule on behalf of the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's all it is. And notice, guys, Jason, did Christ ever preach the gospel of the cross?
Nope. He just came to do it.
did he preach the gospel of the resurrection?
He just came to do it. He hinted towards it.
Mm-hmm. So what did he really focus his entire ministry on?
Introducing the people to the kingdom and the king, which he calls his father.
Yep. That's it.
And if we look in Genesis, we see that man needs to be redeemed because God kicked them out of the kingdom.
He kicked them out. Man had no more authority to rule on heaven's benefit at all. No more authority. But watch this though. If you continue to read the Bible, man continues to make decisions apart from what God wanted. Because remember, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, he said, let man rule. Remember, a king cannot violate his own law. He cannot. So is it accurate to conclude that if a believer doesn't understand the difference between a kingdom and religion, they will not understand the scriptures entirely?
I think there would definitely be some disconnects,
Yes.
and some applicational malfunction.
Yeah.
Because if we are kingdom citizens, like Paul said, Peter says, he says, we are citizens of heaven. That's a governing term.
Yes.
Like it says, for the wages of sin. Like these are all legal and monetary type terms that are being used when it comes to us and what and the transactions that take place.
Yes.
In heaven and how that government is ruled.
Yes.
Right. So the wages of sin is death is a rule, is a law in the books.
Yes.
That is a law in the Constitution of heaven.
Yes.
And this is treason. In every kingdom, the allegiance to the king is required, or you will be banished or murdered.
Yes.
Right. So the king has some laws set up. And if we read the scriptures in light of a kingdom, we see that God has some laws that he has enacted, and it is required by the citizens to follow. And if the citizens do not follow, then they will reap the repercussions of the governing punishments that are set up by that kingdom. Just as in our land, if you murder, depending on the type of murder, will come a sentence.
I agree.
God operating the same way because he is a king who has a governing system with laws in place that require for his laws to be acted out, regardless of how harsh or how much we would like it not to be so.
Guys, man, if you begin to understand the concept of what a kingdom is, be careful, because a lot of people actually look at Christ as a president and not a king. They are distinct differences between a democratic system and a kingdom. They're total opposite of one another. Total opposites. But all you've been exposed to is a democracy type of context, not a kingdom. Now, some folk may say, well, in a kingdom, there's a chance for the king to rule and be a tyrant. That's the same reality when it comes to a democracy as well. How can we begin to determine if this king called Christ is a worthy king? Now you got to look at the character of the king now. And that's when we begin to look at the character of the king, Jason, then you'll be able to see why Christ is the perfect king. That's what I would say. But you agree or disagree? Because I guess I know we come up on 9 o'clock.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of aspects that needs to be unpacked.
Yeah, I agree.
So that we can just begin to properly put in context what Jesus was teaching, and we can get the fullness of what he's teaching from
Yeah.
context and not filtering it through our context. I noticed I did that a lot before I understood the kingdom. I filtered my worldview through the scriptures versus allowing the scriptures to shape my thinking. So I would always, based on things like I am free, right? Because that is a concept of the United States, and
Yes.
what freedom of speech and
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And if you look at the scriptures, and it doesn't give us those freedoms to really make our own decisions. Paul, once he understood that, he said, I am a bondservant.
Yeah.
I don't he referred to himself as a slave.
Bond slave. Yeah.
A bond slave. Slaves don't have rights, right? Because they're owned by someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We, as the created, are property, not to the God who created us, not property of other men. So when it comes to our freedoms, those freedoms need to be checked at the door with the king.
Yes, sir. And the thing of go ahead.
No,
Go ahead, Jason. And the thing about it is this here is people may think and say, I want to give up my freedoms that I have here. Here's my thing is you're giving up nothing, but you're gaining everything. Think about this, Jason. If you have a father, Jason, that owns, let's say, a company, and he owns everything. Everything is his. He's flush with all the cash. He has everything you need, and he says, "Son, anything you ask in my name, I'll give to you." Doesn't that give you a little bit more freedom?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't they kind of release worry from you? Just mention my name, and I got it. So you can go anywhere. Oh, just put it on my dad's tab. And who's your dad? So on Jesus. Oh, wow. Okay. Put it on his tab. So your dad's name carries weight, a lot of weight and power and authority. And so for me, that's why I like for the king to own everything. And he gives me access to all that is his, because all the responsibility of providing falls upon the king. And it just so happens one of his names is Jehovah Jireh, the Lord that provides. And remember, whatever a king says, he himself has to abide by the very thing that he actually said. So you can say Christ had to die because he was faithful to his word.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that 1000%. So it's just Pastor Cox said it is hard for those. It's on Instagram. It is hard for those in a democratic society to grasp the concept that it's a kingdom and not a place where we get a vote. You're right, Pastor, because all we've been exposed to is democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So it's man, Jason. I think we gave him a little bit, a lot today to kind of chew on a little bit, guys. Just begin to study what a kingdom is. The Bible is about a king, his kingdom, and his royal children. That's all it's about. Would you agree, Jason?
I agree. So, everything moving forward, we're going to start diving into, you know, uh, what did Jesus preach about the kingdom? What was he trying to communicate to us about this kingdom?
how do kingdom citizens operate? How do kingdom citizens relate to being in a foreign land right now, so that we can begin to unpack the Bible from a more contextual standpoint, and then find those pressure points and conflicting points where we have to wrestle with our democracy or democratic mindset and see how that sometimes may conflict with the kingdom, and how to adjust our thinking to this kingdom if we are kingdom citizens, right? If you're not a kingdom citizen, then the rules don't apply to you, right?
Sure. That's right.
We're America, so the laws in China mean very little to us.
So it's correct.
Right. So, but if you notice, in each one of those countries, there is an embassy. There is an embassy that represents whatever land that embassy represents, while on the soil of that land, right? So America has an embassy in China. Although it's in China physically, when you step into that embassy, you operate under American law and rule.
Yes, sir.
God has set his embassy, his ecclesia, his people group, not a church, his ecclesia, his people group, to be his embassy here on earth. So although we are here on this earth under this democratic system, we are citizens of heaven, and we operate under the guides and laws of that place in which we are from, which is called the kingdom of heaven, where Jesus is ruling with his Father.
Yes, sir.
So that is where I would like to pick up next week on how we exist as kingdom citizens on the earth.
Oh God, hey, Jason, I'll end it on this, man. You went there. I gotta give that a little bit too, baby. Let them. I want them to see me say this, Jason. When he talked about an embassy over in, let's say, China, Jason, what is the head of it in the embassy called?
What is it, man? It flees my mind.
I got you. Ambassador.
Uh-huh.
What are we called again? We are what for Christ?
As ambassadors.
I'm trying to tell y'all, man. There's so much governmental terms in the text, man, pertaining to the kingdom. You guys just don't understand. And for instance, in the kingdom, in a religion, prayer is you're trying to appease, get God, get that person that needed to move. It's an appeasing type of scenario. It's hard work. It's hard work. In the kingdom, we don't appease, we petition. And all we do is say, King, you said this, so we expect this. And the king gets excited because we just repeated back his law that he actually said. And he is bound by that law to move. A lot less work, right? We're gonna go in. We're going down, yo. Oh man, but Jason, this was good, man. You want to say anything, man, before we chime off, yo?
No, man. My hour is up, man. Let's stick to the schedule. It was great chatting with you, brother. To all those who are listening, see y'all next week.
God bless you guys, man. Thanks so much for the time, guys. Peace.